Hello students, இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பார்க்க போற டாபிக் types of forces. First, like parallel forces and unlike parallel forces பார்க்கலாம். Like parallel forces picture பாருங்க. There are 4 lines with upward arrow mark. Each line represents a force. ஒரு கோடு வந்து ஒரு force represent பண்ணுது. அந்த லைன் உடைய அளவு force ஓட magnitude குறிக்கும். அந்த arrow mark force ஓட direction குறிக்கும். Because force is a vector quantity, it has both magnitude and direction. So, இப்ப அந்த 4 forceம் எப்படி இருக்கு? Parallel-ஆ இருக்கு. ஒரே directionல act பண்ணுது. And magnitude பொறுத்த அளவுல அது equal-ஆவும் இருக்கலாம், unequal-ஆவும் இருக்கலாம். So, equal or unequal magnitude acting in the same direction parallel to each other. இந்த conditions-க்கு apply ஆனா அது like parallel forces. How to define like parallel forces? Two or more forces of equal or unequal magnitude acting along the same direction parallel to each other are called like parallel forces. See the unlike parallel forces. First two lines. One is in the upward direction, the other acts in the downward direction. So what are unlike parallel forces? Two or more forces of equal or unequal magnitude acting along opposite directions parallel to each other are called unlike parallel forces. ஒரே directionல act பண்ணா like parallel forces, opposite directionல act பண்ணா unlike parallel forces. Now let us see what is meant by resultant force. See the diagram. There are 3 green color boxes on the left side and 3 violet color boxes on the right side. Left side வந்து applied force ன்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, right side வந்து resultant force. ரெண்டு force act பண்ணுது ஒரு பொருள் மேலயும். அந்த ரெண்டு force பண்ற வேலையை ஒரு single force பண்ணுச்சுனா அதுதான் resultant force. See the first green color box. Two forces are acting in the opposite directions. They are unlike parallel forces. So, அதோட resultant எப்படி கண்டுபிடிக்கிறதுனா, you have to subtract. 2 minus 2 is 0 Newton. See the second green colored box. Again there are two forces acting, but they are acting in the same direction. So, they are like parallel forces. So, how to find the resultant? You have to add. 2 plus 3 gives 5. So, the resultant force is 5 Newton. It acts along the same direction as the applied forces. See the third box. Again, two forces are acting but in the opposite direction. So, they are unlike parallel forces. To find the resultant, you should subtract. So, 3 minus 2 gives 1. 1 Newton is the resultant force. See the direction of the resultant force? It acts along the direction of the greater force. இதில் எது greater, எது பெரிய force? 3 Newton. So, resultant force will act in the direction of 3 Newton. Let us see some more examples. See the first diagram. Two forces are acting. They are acting in the same direction. So, they are like parallel forces. To get the resultant, you should add. 10 plus 20 gives 30 Newton. The second picture, two forces acting but in opposite direction. So, they are unlike parallel forces. To get the resultant, you should subtract. 40 minus 20 gives 20 Newton. And the resultant force acts in the direction of the greater force. See the third one. Two forces are acting. They are acting in the opposite direction. So, they are unlike parallel forces. To get the resultant, you should subtract. 25 minus 25, it is 0 Newton. So, if one force does the work of all the other forces, then that single force is called resultant force. Let us see the definition. Define resultant force. When several forces act simultaneously on the same body, then the combined effect of the multiple forces can be represented by a single force, which is called as resultant. Now let us see what are balanced forces. See the picture. Two boys are pulling a rope. They are giving equal force but in opposite direction. So they are unlike parallel forces. So the resultant is 0. So the body will not move. Such forces are called balanced forces. When the resultant force is 0, then the body will be in equilibrium. Equilibrium means stable. No movement will be there. Let us see what is unbalanced force. Again, a tug of war example. Two persons on the right side and one person on the left side. Which side has greater force? Right side. So, the resultant force acts in the direction of the greater force. So, the body will move. When the resultant force is not equal to 0, then the body will move. Such forces are called unbalanced forces. Now, let us see what is equilibrant. See the diagram. Two forces are acting on the body. One in the upward direction, 2 Newton. The other in the downward direction, 1 Newton. So, they are unlike parallel forces. How to get the resultant? Subtract. 2 minus 1 is 1 Newton. So, what is the direction of the resultant force? Upward, in the direction of the greater force. Now, what is equilibrant? Equilibrant அப்படிங்கிறது resultant force ஓட magnitude ஈக்குவலா இருக்கும், டைரக்ஷன் ஆப்போசிட்டா இருக்கும். அப்படி ஆக்ட் பண்ணி அந்த சிஸ்டமை ஸ்டேபிள் ஸ்டேட், அதாவது ஈக்லிபிரியம் ஸ்டேட்டுக்கு கொண்டு வரும். அப்படி கொண்டு வர ஃபோர்ஸ் தான் நம்ம ஈக்லிபிரண்ட்னு சொல்றோம். A system can be brought to equilibrium by applying another force which is equal to the resultant force in magnitude but opposite in direction. Such force is called equilibrant. So, என்னென்ன forces பார்த்தோம்? Like parallel forces, unlike parallel forces, resultant force and equilibrant. You should know how to calculate the resultant of like parallel forces and unlike parallel forces, and you should know how to define all the types of forces we have seen. Thank you.